Alrighty boys, let's do it. It's time to do our updated build and rune guide for patch 14.21. I'm currently masters right now. I'm gonna be honest, Kled does not feel the best right now, as you guys have probably told or could tell. I feel like most people are struggling right now with Kled in the current season. But yeah, I have my update. I'm gonna do an updated build rune guide here to give you guys my insights on what I think are the best builds right now. And also, I will have a bruiser option in this video, because in the past I usually have just been doing lethality because I still think lethality is the best, but I've had a lot of people request me to do a bruiser setup as well, so we're gonna go over both lethality and bruiser. So let's get right to it. First, for runes. Runes haven't really changed at all. It's still the same for me. The only thing that you can really interchange is either the secondary or just between Legend Haste and Locker, depending on preference. I like Haste more just because I feel like there's very little haste right now in the items, so having the extra 15 haste just for free is really nice. So I like the haste, but Alacrity is fine. But Conquer, Triumph, Lost Stand are always just go-tos. And then for secondary, you can either do Transcend's Gathering if you want scaling, or you can go for a more early game focused page with Demolish Second Wind. I think Inspiration's kind of a dead tree. I was doing this for a while on mid lane, but I think it's kind of dead now, so I've usually just been doing this mid in the poke lanes. And I think the domination tree's also been kind of met ever since I got rid of a Genius Hunter. So yeah, I'm either going sorcery for Transcendence Gathering for scaling, or into like harder matchups or poke matchups, I've been doing Demolish Second Wind. And then I like double adaptive. You can do attack speed, it's more preference, doesn't really matter. And then I think the flat HP shard is just better than the scaling one, so I go flat. But obviously into like high CC comps, you can go tenacity because it's just nice to have. But yeah, those are pretty much the runes. I haven't changed them since the beginning of the split, so there's not too much to go into for that. And now let's go right into the items. So actually, no, I forgot to put this in here. I'm gonna put this in first. But for items, obviously our starting buys, usually it's either D-Blade or D-Shield. D-Blade into most melees are just standard matchups, and the D-Shield into poke lanes. If say, like, people always ask me all the time about coal and when you should buy coal. You should only really buy coal pre 5 minutes on your first base timer if, say, you have, say, you're basing on like 450 or like what 650, 600 gold, or you're able to buy coal without actually sacking or sacrificing too much other gold values. It's nice to have early just because it's free gold income. But say you're basing on what, say 700 gold for example, or even like 750. It's usually better to get two long swords because you want to get as much value out of your spending as possible. So you don't want to overforce the coal buy, but if you can get a coal like pre 5 minutes, just because of like a early base timer, so you get like a 3-wave cheater and you have around like 450 gold. It's good that it's nice to have just because it's free gold income, but it's not an every game item. You don't have to worry about it too much. But yeah, that's pretty much it for like thing on coal. For boots, I'm either going the I'm either sitting on tier 1 boots, or I'll either go souls if I feel like they don't too much AD like auto attackers, or I'll sometimes go tabbies if it feels like I absolutely need it. I think mercs are pretty dead. Like, it's a very rare for me to ever even think about building mercs just because they're so expensive and pretty meh. So I usually don't go mercs ever. But I'd say most games I'm either sitting on tier 1s or I'm going souls, unless they're like super high auto attack based champions with a lot of AD. But yeah, now moving on to the actual items. For first items right now, I'm usually either doing Hubris or Voltaic, but I do think if you want to go the Bruiser area setup, that you can go Eclipse. I think Eclipse is still a fine first item. I just prefer these two. I usually do Voltaic into range matchups or just very high mobile comps, or I'll just do Hubris into like more standard, just standard matchups like melees and stuff like that. I don't go Hydro Rush anymore, just even if I am like planning on doing Hydro, which I'll show you guys in a bit. I usually don't go Hydras too often, but if I do go Hydras, it's usually not until like second or third item now, just because all the Hydras got nerfed a couple patches ago and they're very expensive and don't actually give that much value. So I don't think it's actually that good to go Hydras early on now, just because of how expensive they are for the amount of like damage value they actually give. And yeah, I just don't think they're that insane, so that's why I usually go either of these two items. But I do think this item's also fine. You can even maybe throw in a Sundered Sky if you want to go Bruiser, but I'd say these are usually the most consistent item for time spikes. Now moving on to my actual build, I'll usually do Hubris as I was mentioning. First item in pretty much all my games. Then second item, it depends. If they have a lot of mobility still, like say it wasn't for my lane specifically, but they have a lot of mobility, I do like Voltaic. It's a really nice second item still, even if you're not rushing it. But if you don't really need Voltaic slow, then I've actually been starting to do Collector a bit more, because I did actually make this item a lot cheaper last patch. It used to be 3,400 gold, so it was like literally like the worst item in the game, but they cut the gold by 450. So it's actually not that bad of an item anymore. And as you can see here, I usually always go LDR for my pen items, so having the extra 25% crit chance is just really nice. So I like to pair it up with LDR a decent amount. So like a starter build into like comps without any shields or anything or high mobility would be like Hubris and the Collector LDR. Fourth item, just preference. You can go Yomu's, you could go Voltaic fourth if you wanted to, you can do Axiom. Like you can be very flexible with items afterwards. Like that's usually what I'm looking for in a 3-item spike. But yeah, if they have a shield for like a lot of shields, for example, like say you're against like a Riven or something, what I'll sometimes do is I'll do like Hubris and then just go Serpent's second item. Or if I'm against a tank and I need a Serpent's later, then I'll do like Hubris into LDR second and then go Serpent's third. I don't really go Maw too often anymore. I do have it here as like an option if they're like super high AP comps, because they did nerf this item pretty hard recently, like a couple patches ago. So I don't like it too much, but if they are very heavy AP, I think it still is a fine option. So it's just there as like a safety net, especially if they're like against like a triple AP topside, then it's like fine to go earlier as well. But it's kind of just there. But for the most part, usually the Hubris or Voltaic first into usually either Collector or Serpents, and then yeah, LDR is the pen item, unless they have so much healing to where you absolutely need Mortal. But Mortal is a pretty trash item, so most games I'd say just go LDR, and then yeah, you can be flexible afterwards. Now I've actually been experimenting with this build. This is the build with Sustain, because people have been asking me a lot about like if there's like a damage Sustain build. So I've been actually testing this out recently. It doesn't feel too bad. Where I've been doing either Voltaic or Hubris. I usually have been doing Voltaic, honestly, but you can do Hubris as well and switch it out. It's the same thing. But I've been doing Ravenous second with it, and then going into this like damage afterwards. And it doesn't feel too bad. I only really do this though. I've only been doing this though into like beefier matchups where I can't really burst them too hard. But I'm still not like a big fan of Ravenous, but I do think Ravenous is probably the best Hydra right now if you were to build a Hydra. So this is like another setup that you could try out and see how it feels if you feel like you do need the actual Hydra, because you just feel like you can't play without Hydras. And it feels decent. So this is pretty much just the setup I have here. Now moving on to the Bruiser setup. This is the one that people have been asking for me for a while to like figure out like a Bruiser build. I personally am not a huge fan of it. I was testing this out a lot the other day, which you guys probably saw by that one video I posted the other day. I don't think Bruiser is horrendous right now. But the reason why I don't like Bruiser that much is just because it's very team reliant, just because you're not building as much damage, right? And it's harder to like actually 1v9 games when you're not building as much damage. But this is like the most success I've had, like when I was testing out stuff, is I've been doing Eclipse usually first item with it, and then I'll either go between Ravenous or Titanic, just honestly based off preference, like just what I'm feeling in the game. I think they're both fine. I think Ravenous does have a little bit more upside in terms of like being able to snowball quicker, just because Titanic has worse components, but I think they're both fine. It's just more preference. Like obviously Ravenous has Sustain, and then Titanic has the auto reset, so I think they're both fine. For pet items, you can either do Cleaver or you can actually go Grudge. I mean, you can even do LDR if you really wanted to, but I feel like for a traditional Bruiser build, most people prefer just have more HP, so I think Cleaver's fine. The issue though is you don't want to stack too much HP even if you are going Bruiser, just because of how much HP you already have, and there's a lot of % max health in the game. So say you were wanting to go Cleaver, for example, I'd say do like Eclipse, Ravenous, Cleaver in that order. So you're not building too much HP. And then maybe fourth item, if you wanted, you could do Sundered as well. But you don't want to stack too much HP. So say you wanted to do Titanic, it'd probably be better to do like Eclipse, Titanic, and then with Grudge, and then yeah, you can do Sundered or something like that. But I wouldn't go more than 2 HP items in a build. So yeah, a build you could do is like Eclipse into Rav, into like a Cleaver, Sundered Sky, and then you can go like a Jack Show or like a Maw or Death Stance, depending on what like kind of resists you need later on into the game. But as I mentioned, I'm not like a big fan of the Bruiser build, just because it's very reliant, like team reliant, and if your teammates aren't like performing, it just feels like you can't really do much compared to Lethality, where if you can get going by yourself as Lethality, you can kind of just take over games and just one-shot everything. So I think it's just more preference, but I think this build is like viable. Like you can do it. It's just I personally am more of a fan of the lethality builds. But yeah, I hope you guys enjoyed this. I'm gonna put the item set in the description down below if you guys want to use this item set. And yeah, if you guys have any questions or just ideas for specific items, let me know down below. And yeah, I'll see you guys in the next video.